Welcome back to AM Northwest. Are you an open book who shares your thoughts and feelings with others? Yeah, like me. Or do you live in fear of saying too much? Here to share the underrated power of oversharing, we welcome the author of Revealing, Harvard professor Leslie John. Good to see you, Leslie.
Good to see you too.
I hear you call yourself a recovering privacy expert. That's the complete opposite of what you're saying now.
I know, totally. I've done a real 180. Yeah, so for the first half of my career, I would stand in front of people lecturing them on how we're so bad at privacy, we're so bad at sharing, we say too many things. And then I realized 10 years into my career that, wow, the single most consistent thing across all of my research is just how open people are. And when I make them feel safe, when I make them feel, when it's fun, when it's relational, they really want to talk to me. They really want to tell me things. And so I thought, you know, it's maybe the real problem is undersharing, not oversharing. I think many of the mistakes we make with sharing, they happen online where, yeah, we hear these horror stories of people who are venting about their boss and then they get fired. And, that's not wrong. But the broader point, I think, is in life.
Right.
In real life.
In real life,
we should share
person to
more.
person,
Yeah,
person to person.
exactly. Exactly.
So why write a book about it now?
Yeah, well, there's a number of things that really struck me and really kind of lit a fire under me to write this because I really think that, we treat oversharing as the greatest social sin. But I think the much bigger threat to our relationships, families, colleagueships, it's undersharing.
Yeah.
And so I've had one of the studies that really struck me was this study where what they did was they videotaped children's faces as children like really young, like preschoolers, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, as the children were watching something scary. They also recorded how sweaty their hands were, galvanic skin response, which is a measure of how physiologically stressed they were. And what they found as the children watched this scary movie, the children that let it out, the children that expressed their fear on their faces, they were less physiologically stressed.
Oh.
Now, yeah, and suggesting that letting it out is literally good for you because it makes you less stressed. Then, as a boy mom, I have a 4 and a 5-year-old. The thing that shook me was that they tracked the kids. By the time the kids had reached kindergarten, there was a gender difference such that the boys were now not expressing on their faces.
Oh, wow.
Meaning they were more stressed, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just thought, like, they're this young and the boys are suppressing. This is a problem.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so let's say, can we take this philosophy of oversharing into the workplace, and would that help us?
Absolutely, absolutely. So often we suppress ourselves, and the workplace is a great example because that's like a very buttoned up situation where we might think, I would never benefit from showing my cards a little bit more. But here too, again and again, we've found in many studies that people stand to benefit. What might be an example? Well, a friend was just telling me about this meeting at work when it was super frustrating. They're sitting around a table, no one's making any progress. Finally, she decided to just share her feelings and say, I feel frustrated.
Yeah.
We never think of doing that. And she said that once she said that, the whole thing changed. Everyone was like open and addressing the issues because she had the guts to convey really what was going on. And a lot of times that means identifying, articulating a feeling. Feelings are so informative. They're game changers.
Okay.
And yet we don't share them.
Leslie, I'm thinking maybe your definition of oversharing is not my definition of oversharing. If you know
Tell
what
me
I'm
more.
talking about, I'm just saying, usually it seems to me like in the workplace when you get someone, and after a while you've been there a while, you're talking about your husband, you're talking about the kids, you're talking about something that didn't go so well, a much more detailed, intimate sometimes experience.
Yes. And so oversharing is still a thing.
Yeah.
It is alive and well, but even when we overshare, like even when we say something cringy, there's often redemption. So in writing the book, I went through some of my own most embarrassing moments, most cringy overshares.
Yeah.
And I thought, over time, there actually was so much redemption. Like that time I told 2 senior colleagues my most embarrassing story ever. It's in the book. You're welcome. They cringed, but they also became my closest mentors,
Yes.
and not in spite of that, because they said, when you shared that, you're real.
Right.
We like talking to real people. So yeah, there's oversharing, the nature you're talking about, which is alive and well, and not a good thing. So in the workplace where you're just kind of unloading, I think a lot of the time it's not so much sharing the wrong thing, but it's a failure to read the room. Like, if you're the one that's dumping about your husband or your spouse at work and nobody else is gossiping,
Gotcha.
if it's enough about me, let's talk about me syndrome, that's a faux pas.
That
right?
makes sense.
Yeah, and so I think of it as revealing is a skill. We can all do it better. For most of us, even those card-carrying oversharers like me, we can still benefit from revealing a little bit more a lot of the time.
Yeah. There's kind of a sweet spot, isn't there?
Yes, definitely. It's kind of like Goldilocks. So there's TMI, too much information, TLI, too little information, new word, right? We haven't been paying enough attention to TLI. And getting that sweet spot between the two takes experience and practice and experimentation and self-reflection, for sure.
Let's talk about asking questions of others.
Great.
Now it seems like in the workplace you're really not allowed in many cases to ask any personal questions, even if they're just a coworker.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to liberate us to ask questions, because in fact, when you ask questions to people, obviously you get information, but more importantly, in my view, are the relational benefits to asking questions. So there have been studies where people have been randomized in the workplace, in friendships, whatever context, to ask more questions.
Yeah.
They've been induced to ask more questions. And the person on the receiving end, do they feel like it's prying and nosy? No. Almost every time, the person on the receiving end is really grateful that you're asking them questions.
Right. Because usually it's about, how are you doing? You okay today?
Yeah, yeah. And there you can listen to their answer and ask follow-up questions. Follow-up questions are actually the most magical question. I'm using my magical hands because it signals to people that you're listening, right?
Right.
To ask a good follow-up question. And that's really, people want to be heard and understood. And that's the core of like good rapport and relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. It is fascinating, so much so. Okay, we want to tell everyone again, the book again is titled Revealing by Leslie John. Leslie, thank you so much. That was great.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.